All right, well, welcome everybody again to Conversations on Couches. Today, I am with Yuan Chang. He's one of our elders here at Discovery. He is a group leader and does probably about 10,000 other things to help make Discovery function and flourish. So, Yuan, thanks for joining us. You're not on a couch, and I'm not on a couch. So, is this even real? Tell us real quick where you are.
Yeah, I am in the corner of our guest room, which is where I spend most of my day. Um, Although I would much prefer to be sitting on the couch, but Mabel is
Sure.
being very talkative right now, so I'm hiding.
And Mabel is your 1-year-old daughter, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so in this new season of Conversations on Couches, we are talking about passion and different things that people in our community are passionate about. And over the last couple of years, as I've gotten to know you, I've heard you talk a lot and reflect a lot on your passion for like vocation and calling and helping people discover what their vocation and calling is, and in particular, helping people see that the work that they do is part of their ministry, part of their calling to help build the kingdom of God. That you don't have to choose sort of between the two, right? Like for a lot of people, it feels like, oh, do I go into ministry or do I just like work a normal job? And part of your story, and again, part of your passion is helping people see that they can be one and the same thing. So tell us a little bit about that, how you came to that place, your journey with that, and how you sort of see your work and ministry fitting together.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so I guess coming out of college, I got a job because I was like, it's just what people do. And I've been working for a while as at a software company doing business stuff. But at the same time, I was also helping to lead our college ministry. And there was always this thought on my mind of like, where do I want to be spending my time, right? My time and my energy. And I think after about 4 or 5 years of doing both and sleeping very, very little, um, I decided to pursue a pastoral internship and take some seminary courses and basically be like, yeah, like I'll go the pastoral route. Um, and oddly enough, it was actually through that experience. One piece of it was in the seminary program, we got to learn more about kind of the cultural mandate back in Genesis and just kind of like God's design for humans and the unique calling that we have to like make something of the world that he's given us and how high and awesome of a calling that is. And so just reading some of the books around that, I was like, oh man, yeah, like culture making is something that we as humans do like very naturally and kind of uniquely. And being in the workplace or business is in many ways shaping culture in many ways, right? And so that was kind of one of the first things that hit me. And the second piece of it was realizing that I missed being in the workplace, not just because I kind of liked the work I do, but also I was still like a contractor at that time, but working like very few hours. And I would go into the office and my coworkers would like sometimes be stressing out over something that needs to get done. And I'm like, oh, like I can't help them anymore because I don't have the hours to be here. And that made me realize that like being a good coworker can actually be a blessing to people and help shape kind of the culture of that workplace or that team that you're on. And not being there meant that I couldn't really do that as much. And so I think realizing some of those things made me realize that, yeah, like I don't have to go become a full-time pastor in order to be investing in people's lives, but there's an opportunity right here in kind of some of the things that God's gifted me in doing business to be able to, one, help shape kind of the direction and trajectory of companies, to be thinking about how we shape kind of the broader culture that we live in, but also kind of very on the day-to-day level, just how I'm engaging with my coworkers to hopefully love them well and be shaping the culture of that team, and building a place that looks a little bit, hopefully more like God's kingdom and his intention for how we kind of cultivate those relationships.
Great. Tell us a little bit more. I'm gonna change up the order of questions here, I think. So, tell me a little bit more about. Well, let me just ask the question this way. So, let's say I come to you and I'm like, UN, I feel like I'm supposed to do something to serve God's kingdom. And part of me feels like I should be, working on staff at a church or doing something like that. Part of me feels like I should be doing this other thing, starting a business or, working in this particular fields. How would you help someone sort of walk through like that discernment process?
Yeah. Good question. I mean, I think a lot of it would be helping that individual kind of unpack what they feel like God's gifted them in, what opportunities God's provided for them, and what's life-giving for them, right? And to kind of help process through that. I mean, because in some sense, I think, yeah, like we can be helping to see kind of God's kingdom come wherever we're working, right? As long as we're engaging with people, with culture, like we are called to be a part of doing that, whether that's in the church or in the workplace, right? And so I think that's kind of where I would lead the conversation. At the same time, I think I'm also very sensitive to the fact that like it is oftentimes a luxury to get to choose your career trajectory or the profession that you're in, right? And not everyone gets to be like, oh yeah, I'm doing something that I'd love to do. And so I do think that wherever God has placed us though, can be an opportunity to be, or is an opportunity to make culture and to be an encouragement, right? We interface with people, be that internal customers or external customers in whatever job we're in. And in the grander scheme of like culture and economy, like things move in such a way that even if you're just like a piece of the puzzle, like it is part of this broader culture making kind of idea. I always think of like pizza, for example. Like pizza is something that makes me like really happy, right? Like going to a pizza and eating pizza makes me really happy. But if you think about like all the like cultural elements and just like work, like daily boring work elements that need to happen for a really awesome pizza to be made, like there's so many factors that go into that. And in some ways, like, yeah. And so I feel like doing our work well, and having that in mind of like, yeah, like this is where God's placed me, and I might not be, doing something that I'm like, yeah, this is my life dream, but knowing that God's placed me here and as part of humanity to be creating culture and shaping culture in a way that is God glorifying, I think can give great, I think, joy and meaning to kind of what we're doing on the day to day.
Yeah, that's great. So again, kind of the big umbrella passion is for work, for culture making, and then for helping people see that the things that they're involved in their working life can be ministry. But then you're also passionate about this sort of new project that you're working on. So I want you to tell us a little bit about this because it's very interesting to me. But you are doing this thing at Lake Tahoe that's fascinating to me. So tell us a little bit about your kind of new passion project that you've started up here in the last couple of months.
Yeah, sure. So this is kind of like a side project that I work on at night. But essentially,
time, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, like the Tahoe Environmental Research Center has been monitoring the Lake Tahoe environment ecosystem, and particularly the water clarity over the last 50 to 60 years. And if you're unfamiliar with that, it's basically been on the decline for a while. And they just recently found that it might be this tiny invasive shrimp that people put in the lake 60 years ago that is significantly affecting some of this water clarity issues. So myself and a team of people are basically working on a project to harvest these tiny shrimp and then make dog treats out of them and try to sell them as dog treats to cover the cost of kind of the environmental restoration is what we're working on. Yeah, go ahead now.
Well, so again, I mean, that's such an interesting thing to me for a whole bunch of reasons. But tell us a little bit more. Just like, why is that interesting to you? Why are you excited about it? How does that fit into your, again, kind of going back to that Genesis 2 cultural mandate or Genesis 1 cultural mandate? Like, where do you see that fitting into that?
Yeah, and so I think a large part of that, I mean, On the environmental side, there's just kind of like stewarding nature, I think, part of it. But a really big piece of this is, I would say, the regenerative aspect of it, right? And what I mean by regenerative is that like you're taking something, producing something that then comes full circle to like give back to kind of the original and where it's starting point, right? And I think that is what appeals to me most, and kind of the rest of our co-founding team, is that regenerative process and systems. Like when I talk about the idea of businesses and commerce and culture making, that it can be very much in line with God's vision for what humans should be doing, right? And like making something in the world and like taking care of it. I would say that I don't think most businesses do that, right? And I don't think most work it thinks about things like that, because we're such a profit-driven society, right? And I would love to see a different paradigm or model that prioritizes stewardship instead of profits in many ways. And I think this particular project is cool because, yeah, it's environmental. Yeah, it touches on dogs, which are super cute, touches on Tahoe, which a lot of people care about. But I think for us, it's like, it's an opportunity to potentially create something that is regenerative, right? That allows people to buy into something that isn't about dollars at the end of the day, but about kind of something bigger than that.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. All right, we have 2 minutes left. In the last 2 minutes, how do your passions help you? Like, does it help you connect with God, expand your vision of God? I don't know how to frame the question exactly, but I mean, you've hinted at and mentioned this in a number of different ways throughout the conversation, but sort of land it for us with this connection between passion and how you experience God.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing for me is in realizing that work, right, can be and should be in line with kind of God's kingdom and what he's doing and what he's called us to. It turns it into what I'll call a sanctifying experience, in the sense that I fail at it all the time, right? And so it's one thing for me to like know theologically, like, oh yeah, it could be this awesome thing. And I think when I'm actually engaging in that and following God in that, it does make it pretty awesome, right? At the same time, there's always this side of me that's like, oh, I work because I want to be noticed, right? Or I work because I want to climb the corporate ladder, or like all these other reasons in me. And so I would say one of the biggest things for me is it's allowed these 40 hours a week to become something that's constantly shaping me, right? Because I'm constantly then thinking about, hey, which story am I living out of, right? Am I living out of the me that's driving and working because I have to, or because, you know, I need to make a name for myself, or I need to make money, or whatever it is? Or am I kind of trusting God and following his design for work, right? And seeing that redeemed. And I think ultimately, I can only live out of his story when I'm walking with him, right? And when he is top of mind and his spirit's leading me in that. And I would say that work and my stress levels in this process is actually probably for me one of the first red flags of if I've been straying, is how I kind of see that. And so I think that for me is where it's been super helpful, and kind of constantly then pointing me kind of back to God and who he is.
Cool. Well, thanks, Yuan. Thanks for joining us for a conversation not on couches.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Sure.
Always good to talk to you.